Captain Han Bin Lee stared at his computer screen in the Korean Space Force monitoring station. The clock showed 3:15 a.m., and he was about to finish his night shift when something unusual appeared on his radar. At first, he thought it was just space debris, but then the signal pattern changed. It wasn't random noise. It was a message. "This is strange," he said to himself, adjusting his headphones. The message came from deep space, far beyond any human spacecraft's current position. He had worked at this station for 5 years, but he had never seen anything like this before. The message repeated itself every 30 seconds. As Han Bin listened carefully, he realized it wasn't in any human language. It wasn't even using normal radio waves. The signal seemed to travel faster than light, which should have been impossible. He pressed the emergency alert button, and within minutes, the quiet monitoring station turned into a busy command center. Other officers rushed to their stations, and screens lit up all around the room. Senior Officer Mai Sun Kang arrived quickly, her uniform slightly wrinkled, as if she had dressed in a hurry. "Report, Captain Lee," she ordered, leaning over his shoulder to look at his screen. "The signal appeared 20 minutes ago," Han Bin explained, pointing to the wave patterns. "It's not like anything in our database. And look at this. It's traveling faster than light speed." My son's eyes widened. "Impossible. Run the tests again." "I already did. 3 times. Han Bin showed her the test results. "Whatever this is, it's not from Earth." The next few hours were busy as more experts arrived at the station. They'd brought in better equipment and ran more tests. By morning, there was no doubt left. They were receiving a message from an alien civilization. But it wasn't just any message. It was a cry for help. Scientists and code breakers worked together to understand the alien language. They discovered that the aliens, who called themselves the Meridians, had included basic mathematical patterns in their message to help humans understand them. It was like they had sent a dictionary along with their distress call. The message became clearer as they decoded more of it. "To any civilization receiving this message, we need urgent help. Our star system is under attack. Our advanced weapons are useless. We have observed your species and believe your different approach might save us. Please respond." The news spread quickly around the world. Humans had dreamed about meeting aliens for centuries, but no one had expected the first contact to be a desperate call for help. 3 days later, the United Earth Council called an emergency meeting. The Grand Meeting Hall in Geneva was packed with representatives from every nation. Large screens showed the decoded alien message, and experts presented their analysis. Admiral Ju-Won Park stood at the podium, his voice steady as he addressed the council. "The Meridians are an advanced civilization. Their technology is far ahead of ours. They can travel between stars easily, and they have cities made of crystal. But now they face an enemy they can't defeat, the Void Hunters." He pressed a button, and a hologram appeared above the podium. It showed strange, cloud-like creatures floating in space. They were huge, bigger than Earth's largest ships. "The Void Hunters eat energy," Admiral Park continued. "They drain power from stars and planets. The Meridians' weapons are all energy-based: lasers, plasma, ion beams. But the Hunters simply absorb these attacks and grow stronger." Murmurs filled the hall as council members discussed this information with each other. Admiral Park waited for them to quiet down before delivering his surprising suggestion. "The Meridians asked for our help because we're different. Our space weapons might seem primitive to them, but that could be exactly what we need. The Void Hunters have never faced physical weapons like missiles and bullets. They don't know how to defend against nuclear explosions." The room grew silent. Everyone understood what he was suggesting. Earth's oldest ships, the ones that still used primitive weapons, might be their best chance to help the Meridians. Captain Ta-Hyun Kim sat in the back of the hall, listening carefully. He commanded one of these old ships, the Korean destroyer Sejong. Many people called these ships outdated, part of the heritage fleet. They were kept working mostly for historical reasons, and as backup in case newer systems failed. But now, these old ships might become humanity's most important weapons. The Council debated for hours. Some members worried about sending ships so far from Earth. Others thought it was too dangerous to get involved in an alien war. But in the end, they agreed. Humanity would help the Meridians. That evening, Captain Kim received his orders. The Sejong would join 5 other Heritage Fleet ships on this mission. They had 1 month to prepare for the longest journey any human ship had ever made. As he walked through his ship's corridors, checking on preparations, Captain Kim felt proud. The Sejong might be old, but her crew was well-trained and dedicated. The ship's halls echoed with activity as crew members checked weapons, tested engines, and loaded supplies. Lieutenant Du Yun Choi, the ship's young weapons officer, rushed up to him with a tablet in her hands. "Captain, you need to see this," she said excitedly. "We just received more detailed messages from the Meridians. They're sending a small ship to guide us to their system." Kim looked at the tablet, studying the new information. The Meridian ship would arrive in 2 weeks. That would give them time to learn more about their allies and their enemies before the journey began. "Good work, Lieutenant," he said. "Make sure all weapon systems are at 100%. We might be using every missile and bullet we have." Du Yun nodded and hurried away. Captain Kim continued his rounds, checking every part of his ship. The Sejong might not be the newest or most advanced ship in Earth's fleet, but she was strong and reliable. Sometimes, he thought, that's more important than being the newest or most advanced. As he reached the bridge, he looked out at the stars through the main window. Somewhere out there, an advanced alien civilization was waiting for help from Earth's oldest ships. The thought made him smile. Maybe being primitive wasn't such a bad thing after all. The next 2 weeks were busy with preparations. Ships were checked and double-checked. Crews trained harder than ever. Everyone knew the importance of their mission. They would be the first humans to travel beyond their solar system, and they would be going to fight an enemy that even advanced aliens couldn't defeat. Finally, the day arrived when the Meridian ship was scheduled to appear. Captain Kim stood on his bridge, watching the space around Earth. Suddenly, a flash of light appeared, and a beautiful ship emerged. It looked like it was made of crystal and light, so different from the solid metal of Earth's ships. The alien ship sent a message. "We are here to guide you to our home. Thank you for answering our call for help. We hope your different way of fighting will save our people." Captain Kim sent back a simple reply. "We're ready. Lead the way." As he looked at the graceful alien ship, he couldn't help but compare it to his own vessel. The Sejong was bigger, heavier, and definitely not as pretty. But she was strong, and her weapons were tested and true. Sometimes, he thought, the old ways are the best ways. The Heritage Fleet prepared to depart. 6 ships, all of them considered outdated by modern standards, formed up behind the Meridian vessel. They carried humanity's hopes, and more importantly, they carried weapons that might be the only thing that could stop the Void Hunters. As the fleet moved out of Earth's orbit, Captain Kim made an announcement to his crew. "We're about to make history, not just as the first humans to travel to another star, but as the ones who will help save an alien civilization. They might have fancy ships and advanced technology, but they need our help. Remember that. Sometimes the oldest tools are the best tools for the job." The crew cheered, their voices echoing through the ship's corridors. The Sejong's engines roared to life, and the Heritage Fleet began its journey into deep space, ready to prove that humanity's primitive weapons might be exactly what was needed to save an advanced civilization. The Meridian ship led them away from Earth, moving faster than any human ship had ever traveled before. Thanks to the alien technology, they would reach the Meridian system in about a month. During that time, they would learn more about their allies and their enemies and prepare for the battle that waited for them. Captain Kim took one last look at Earth through his view screen before it disappeared from sight. He didn't know what they would face out there, but he knew one thing. Sometimes the best solutions are the simple ones. And his ship, with its primitive weapons, might just be the simple solution the Meridians needed. The Heritage fleet moved through space faster than any human ships had ever traveled before. The Meridian guide ship created a special field around them that helped them move quickly. Inside the Korean destroyer Sejong, the crew worked to learn everything they could about their new allies and enemies. Lieutenant Do-yeon Choi sat in the ship's meeting room with Lin, the Meridian advisor who had joined their crew. Lin looked almost human, except for her slightly purple skin and silver hair that seemed to float as if in water. She moved her hands gracefully as she explained about the Void Hunters. "They came to our system 6 months ago," Lin said, her voice translated by a small device on her collar. "At first, we thought they were just strange space clouds. Then they started to drain energy from our outer colonies. Our weapons couldn't hurt them. They just absorbed everything we shot at them." Do-yeon nodded, taking notes on her tablet. "Can you show me how your weapons work? Maybe that will help us understand why they failed." Lin pressed a button on her wrist device, and a hologram appeared above the table. It showed Meridian ships firing beautiful beams of energy at the cloud-like Void Hunters. The beams just disappeared into the creatures, making them grow bigger. "All our weapons use energy," Lin explained. "Plasma beams, laser cannons, ion pulses. The hunters eat them all. We've never needed physical weapons because energy weapons were always more advanced and powerful. But not against these enemies," Do-yeon said thoughtfully. She pulled up information about the Sejong's weapons on her tablet. "Our main guns fire solid metal shells. They're pushed by explosions, but the shells themselves don't have any energy the hunters could eat." Lin looked at the weapon diagrams with great interest. "Such a simple idea. We would never have thought of going back to physical projectiles. We thought that would be moving backward." "Sometimes moving backward is the way to move forward," Captain Kim said as he entered the room. He had been listening from the doorway. "The oldest tools are often the best tools because they've been tested by time." The captain sat down with them and looked at the hologram of the Void Hunters. "How many of them are there?" 12 large ones and about 30 smaller ones," Lin answered. "They surround our main star, slowly drinking its energy. Our cities are losing power. Soon, they will drain our sun completely." Captain Kim studied the images carefully. "Lieutenant Choi, what do you think about using our nuclear weapons?" Do-yeon straightened in her chair. She was young, but she was one of the best weapons officers in the fleet. "The nuclear missiles would create both physical and energy effects, sir. The physical explosion might damage them, and if they try to absorb the energy, it might be too much for them to handle at once." Kim finished her thought. "Like trying to drink from a fire hose." Lin looked confused. "Fire hose? It's a tool we use to fight fires," Do-yeon explained. "If you try to drink from it, the water comes too fast and hard. You can't swallow it all." Understanding showed on Lin's face. "Ah, yes, that's a good way to think about it. But our energy weapons are very powerful too. Why would your nuclear weapons be different?" "Because they release their energy all at once, in a huge burst," Do-yeon said. "And the physical explosion creates a shockwave that might break through their defenses before they can absorb the energy." Captain Kim nodded. "We'll need to test these ideas carefully before we reach your system. Can you help us set up some simulations?" Lin agreed, and they spent the next several hours working on battle plans. The more they learned about the Void Hunters, the more convinced they became that Earth's primitive weapons might actually work against them. Meanwhile, in another part of the ship, engineer Taeho Park worked on improving the Sejong's missile guidance systems. The Meridians had shared some of their sensor technology, which helped the missiles track targets better. But Taeho was careful not to make too many changes. "If we make them too advanced," he explained to his team, "the Void Hunters might be able to absorb their guidance energy. We need to keep them simple and reliable." The crew quickly settled into a routine during their long journey. They trained every day, running battle simulations and practicing emergency procedures. The Meridian technology that helped them travel faster also let them talk to Earth regularly. 2 weeks into their journey, they received an important message from Admiral Ji-won Park. The United Earth Council was having second thoughts about the mission. Some leaders worried that sending old ships was a mistake. They wanted to send newer, more advanced ships instead. Captain Kim called a meeting with his senior officers to discuss the message. They gathered in the ship's command center, where he shared the council's concerns. "They think we're too outdated to handle this mission," he told his officers. "They want to send the new energy fleet instead." Commander Sun Ma-yang, his tactical officer, shook her head. "That would be a terrible mistake. The energy fleet's weapons are even more advanced than the Meridian's weapons. They'd just make the hunters stronger." "Exactly," Kim agreed. "We need to convince the council to stick with the original plan. Lieutenant Choi, show them what we've learned from our simulations." Du Yun presented their findings. The simulations showed that physical weapons and nuclear explosions had a good chance of hurting the Void Hunters. The council members watched the presentation through a video link. "Look at these results," Du Yun explained. "When we fire energy weapons, the hunters absorb 100% of the energy. But our kinetic weapons, the physical shells and missiles, they can't absorb those. The physical impact damages their energy fields." Admiral Park supported their argument. "The Heritage Fleet may be old," he told the council, "but in this case, that's an advantage. Sometimes the old ways are the best ways." The council debated for several hours. Finally, they agreed to continue with the original plan. The Heritage Fleet would remain humanity's best hope for helping the Meridians. After the council meeting, Captain Kim walked through his ship, checking on his crew. He found Lin in the observation room, staring out at the strange space they were traveling through. "Your leaders almost changed their minds about helping us," she said as he joined her at the window. "Yes, but we convinced them to trust us," he replied. "Many humans think newer is always better, but that's not always true." Lin turned to face him. "When we first decided to ask Earth for help, many of my people doubted your civilization. They said you were too primitive, too far behind us. But now I think maybe we're the ones who need to learn from you." "We can learn from each other," Kim said. "Your technology helps us travel between stars. Our old weapons might help save your people. Together, we're stronger than we are alone." The rest of the journey passed quickly as they prepared for the coming battle. The crew of the Sejong worked closely with Lin and the other Meridian advisors, learning about their enemies and planning their attack. Finally, after traveling for almost a month, they received word that they were approaching the Meridian system. Captain Kim called all hands to their stations and sent a message to the other ships in the Heritage Fleet. "We're about to make history," he told them. "Not just as the first humans to visit another star system, but as the ones who will help save an advanced civilization. They might have fancy ships and advanced technology, but they need our help. Remember that. Sometimes the oldest tools are the best tools for the job." As they prepared to enter the Meridian system, Lieutenant Choi ran one final check of their weapons. Every missile, every shell, and every gun had to work perfectly. They wouldn't get a second chance at this. "All weapons show ready, Captain," she reported. "Good," Kim said, looking at the main screen where the first stars of the Meridian system were becoming visible. "Let's show these Void Hunters what Earth's primitive weapons can do." The Heritage Fleet moved into formation, their old but reliable ships ready for battle. Ahead of them lay the Meridian system, its beautiful crystal cities now dark and powerless, its people waiting desperately for help. And somewhere out there, the Void Hunters waited too, not knowing that humanity's oldest weapons were about to become their newest nightmare. The Meridian system came into view slowly. First, they saw the outer planets, their surfaces dark and lifeless. Then they saw the main star, surrounded by strange, dark shapes that moved like clouds in the wind. These were the Void Hunters. Captain Kim stood on the bridge of the Sejong, watching the main screen carefully. "Those things are huge," he said quietly. The smallest Void Hunter was bigger than his ship, and the largest one was bigger than Earth's moon. Lin stood beside him, her silver hair glowing in the dim light. "They've grown larger since we left," she said, her voice worried. "They've been feeding on our star's energy." Lieutenant Du Yan Choi worked at her weapons station, studying the enemy through the ship's sensors. The Void Hunters looked like dark clouds from far away. But up close, she could see patterns in their bodies, like swirling storms made of shadow. "Captain," she called out, "I'm picking up something interesting. The Hunters have solid cores inside their energy fields. They're small, but they might be important." "Good work, Lieutenant," Kim said. "That could be useful. Keep watching them, and gather all the data you can." The Heritage Fleet moved carefully through the outer part of the system. They didn't want the Void Hunters to notice them too soon. As they traveled, they saw the damage the creatures had caused. Meridian colonies on the outer planets were completely dark. Beautiful cities made of crystal stood silent and empty, their people evacuated to the main world. Space stations drifted without power, their lights long dead. Engineer Tahoe Park worked in the engine room, keeping the Sejong's old engines running smoothly. The Meridian technology helped them travel faster, but it was still hard work keeping everything working properly. "It's like trying to teach an old dog new tricks," he told his team as they fixed another minor problem. "But our old girl is tough. She'll hold together." In the ship's meeting room, Commander Sun Mai Yang worked with Lin and other Meridian advisors to plan their attack. They spread star charts across the tables and studied the Void Hunters' movements. "They follow patterns," Sun Mai noticed. "See, they move between these points regularly, like they're patrolling." Lin nodded. "Yes, they seem to have some intelligence. They work together to drain energy most efficiently. That's why our attacks failed. They helped each other absorb the energy from our weapons. But they've never faced physical weapons before," Sun Mai said thoughtfully. "They won't know how to work together against something they can't absorb." The planning continued for several days as they moved closer to the inner system. The Heritage Fleet split into two groups. The Korean ships Sejong and Busan would attack from one direction, while the American ships Normandy and Constitution would attack from another. The two Russian ships, Volga and Amur, would wait in reserve. Captain Kim received regular updates from the other ships. Captain Lee of the Busan reported their weapons were ready. Captain Martins of the Normandy confirmed their nuclear missiles were prepared. Everyone was ready for the battle. But they all knew they would only get one chance to surprise the enemy. As they got closer to the main Meridian world, they saw more damage. Satellites and space stations floated dead in space, but they also saw hope. The main planet still had some power, protected by special shields the Meridians had built. "Those shields won't last much longer," Lin explained. "They use huge amounts of energy, and the Hunters drain more power every day. We have maybe 2 weeks before they fail completely." Do Yun spent much of her time studying the enemy. She worked with the Meridian scientists to understand how the Void Hunters' bodies worked. The creatures were like nothing anyone had seen before. "They're not really alive in the way we understand it," she explained to Captain Kim. "They're more like living storms of energy. But those solid cores we found, they seem to control the creatures. If we can damage the cores, we might be able to hurt them." The crew of the Sejong kept busy preparing for battle. They checked their weapons again and again. They ran practice drills and studied the enemy. Everyone knew what was at stake, not just the Meridian civilization, but maybe the future of humanity too. One evening, Captain Kim found Lin in the observation room again. She was watching her homeworld through the window, its cities barely visible under the weakening shields. "I've been thinking about something," she said as Kim joined her. "Your people could have sent your newest ships. Even if they failed, it would have shown you tried your best. But instead, you sent these old ships, knowing they might have a better chance. That shows true wisdom." Kim smiled. "Sometimes the best tool for the job isn't the newest or most advanced. It's the one that does what you need it to do." As they talked, alarms suddenly started ringing throughout the ship. Du Yin's voice came over the speakers. "Captain, to the bridge. The Void Hunters are moving." Kim rushed to the bridge, Lin right behind him. On the main screen, they could see 3 of the huge creatures moving toward the main planet. "They're going to attack the shields," Lin said, her voice frightened. "If they break through now, before we're ready, then we'll have to fight now," Kim said firmly. He pressed the command button. "All hands to battle stations. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill." Throughout the ship, crew members ran to their positions. In the weapons room, Du Yin checked her targeting systems one last time. In the engine room, Taiho prepared for emergency maneuvers. Kim sent quick messages to the other ships in the fleet. They had trained for this, but they had hoped to have more time to prepare. Now they would have to fight, ready or not. "All ships report ready, Captain," Commander Sun Mai reported from her tactical station. "Good," Kim said. He looked at the massive Void Hunters on the screen. They were about to fight an enemy that had defeated a far more advanced civilization. They would use simple weapons against creatures made of energy. They would fight with old ships against beings that could drain power from stars. But sometimes, he thought, the old ways are the best ways. "All ships, prepare to attack," he ordered. "Let's show these hunters what humanity's primitive weapons can do." The Heritage Fleet moved into attack position, their old engines pushing them forward. They carried humanity's oldest weapons into battle against an enemy that had never faced anything like them before. The fate of the Meridian civilization, and maybe humanity's future, would depend on whether these old ships and simple weapons could do what advanced technology could not. The battle was about to begin. The 6 ships of the Heritage Fleet moved toward the Void Hunters. Captain Kim watched the massive creatures on his screen. They looked like huge storm clouds made of darkness, swirling with strange patterns of energy. "All weapons ready," Lieutenant Du Yun reported from her station. "Nuclear missiles armed. Main guns loaded. Remember," Kim told his crew, "aim for their cores. Those solid parts inside them are their weak points." He opened a channel to the other ships. "All ships, attack pattern Alpha. Begin on my mark." The Void Hunters hadn't noticed them yet. The creatures were focused on draining energy from the Meridian world's shields. Their huge bodies rippled as they absorbed power from the weakening defenses. 3, 2, 1, mark," Kim ordered. All 6 ships fired at once. Missiles streaked through space, leaving trails of fire behind them. The old ship's main guns roared, sending solid metal shells flying at incredible speeds. For a moment, space lit up with the weapons of Earth's oldest warships. The Void Hunters noticed too late. The first wave of missiles hit them before they could react. Explosions ripped through their energy fields, and the metal shells tore holes in their cloud-like bodies. The creatures turned toward the human ships, moving faster than anything so large should be able to move. They tried to absorb the energy from the explosions, but the physical damage was already done. "Direct hits," Du Yun shouted. "We're hurting them." But the Void Hunters weren't defeated yet. They surged toward the fleet, their massive bodies glowing with stored energy. The smallest hunter reached for the Sejong with tentacles made of dark energy. "Hard to port," Kim ordered. The old ship turned quickly, its engines straining. The hunter's tentacles missed them by meters. "Busan, watch your left," Kim warned the other Korean ship. Captain Lee's vessel turned just in time to avoid another hunter's attack. The battle became chaos as ships and hunters fought in space. The American ship Constitution fired its main guns repeatedly, targeting the creature's cores. The Russian ships Volga and Amur launched waves of missiles, filling space with explosions. "Sir," Du Yun called out, "look at this." She showed Kim her sensor readings. "When we hit their cores with physical weapons, they can't absorb the damage. But they're learning. They're starting to move their cores away from our attacks." Kim thought quickly. "Send this data to all ships. Tell them to coordinate their fire. We need to trap the hunters between our attacks." The Heritage Fleet changed its tactics. Now they fired in patterns, forcing the Void Hunters to move their cores into the path of other ships' weapons. It was working. Two of the smaller hunters were already breaking apart, their energy dispersing into space. But then things went wrong. The largest Void Hunter, bigger than all the others, moved toward the Meridian world. Its huge body began to glow brighter and brighter. "It's going to attack the planet," Lin cried out. "If it breaks through the shields." "All ships, focus fire on the large hunter," Kim ordered. Every ship turned their weapons toward the massive creature, but it ignored their attacks. It was too big, too powerful. "Our weapons aren't strong enough," Du Yen said, frustrated. "We need more power." Kim looked at his weapons display. They had used most of their missiles, but they still had their nuclear weapons. It was risky. They'd never fired so many nuclear weapons at once before. "New plan," he announced. "Sejong will get close to the large hunter. When I give the signal, we'll launch every nuclear missile we have into its core. The other ships will fire their remaining missiles at the same time." "Captain," Commander Sun Mai warned, "if we're too close when all those missiles explode." "We'll deal with that when it happens," Kim said firmly. "Engineer Park, can the engines get us close enough?" "They'll hold together, sir," Taiho replied from the engine room. "The old girl has one good run left in her." The Sejong moved toward the massive hunter, its engines pushing hard. The other ships kept firing, distracting the smaller hunters. As they got closer, they could see the creature's true size. It was like flying toward a dark, living mountain. "All nuclear missiles ready," Du Yun reported. Her voice was steady, but her hands shook slightly as she worked her controls. "Wait for it," Kim said quietly. They needed to get closer. The Sejong shuddered as the hunter's energy field brushed against their shields. "Now," Kim ordered. The Sejong fired every nuclear missile it had. The other ships fired their missiles too. Dozens of nuclear weapons streaked toward the hunter's core. The creature tried to move its core away, but there were too many missiles coming from too many directions. "All hands, brace for impact," Kim shouted. "Emergency power to forward shields." The missiles hit the hunter's core all at once. For a moment, nothing happened. Then space itself seemed to tear apart as the nuclear explosions chain reacted with the hunter's stored energy. The Sejong's crew held on as the shockwave hit their ship. Alarms blared and systems failed. Engineer Park and his team worked desperately to keep the engines running as the ship was thrown backward by the explosion. When the light faded, the large hunter was gone. Its energy field had collapsed, and its core had been destroyed. The explosion had damaged or destroyed most of the smaller hunters too. The few that survived quickly fled into deep space. The bridge crew of the Sejong cheered, but they were cut short by more alarms. "Multiple system failures," Taiho reported from engineering. "The engines are badly damaged. Life support is failing." "The Meridian ships are coming to help," Lin said, listening to transmissions from her people. "They'll be here in minutes." Kim looked at his damaged ship with pride. The Sejong and the other Heritage Fleet ships had done what no advanced alien weapon could do. They had defeated the Void Hunters with humanity's oldest weapons. In the days that followed, the Meridians helped repair the human ships. Their cities lit up again as power was restored. The Meridian leaders thanked humanity for their help and offered to share their technology. "But we want to keep some of our old weapons too," Admiral Park told them during the celebration ceremony, "just in case we need them again." The Meridians agreed. They helped upgrade the Heritage Fleet ships while keeping their primitive weapons. The old ships would become a perfect mix of old and new technology. As the crew of the Sejong prepared to return home, Lin came to say goodbye to Captain Kim. "Your people taught us something important," she said. "Sometimes the old ways are the best ways. We became so focused on moving forward that we forgot to keep what worked in the past." Kim smiled. "And you taught us that moving forward doesn't mean leaving everything behind. It means taking the best of the old and the new together." The Heritage Fleet began its journey home, their ships now carrying both human and Meridian technology. They had gone to help an advanced civilization and had succeeded using humanity's oldest weapons. They had proved that sometimes the simplest solution is the best solution. As Earth came into view weeks later, Captain Kim gathered his crew on the bridge. "Remember this," he told them. "We won not because we were stronger or more advanced, but because we kept our old tools ready when we needed them. Sometimes the oldest tools are the best tools for the job." The Sejong's engines, a mix of old human engineering and new Meridian technology, pushed them toward home. They had made history not once, but twice, as the first humans to travel to another star, and as the ones who saved an advanced civilization with humanity's oldest weapons. Above them, the stars shined brightly, and somewhere out there, the Meridians were rebuilding their worlds, now protected by a strange but effective mix of old and new technology. The story of Earth's Heritage Fleet would be told for generations, teaching both humans and aliens that true wisdom means knowing when to keep the old ways alongside the new.